Hello humans and animals alike, this is Dylus, and welcome to the bonus episode of Gex Enter the Gecko, where I will be talking about various trivia and oddities about the game, including gameplay, secrets, version differences, merchandise, cheat codes, and we'll end things off with talking about Gex and Rez's character. So, without further ado, let's get started. So to start off, I'll discuss various gameplay secrets, most of which I've already covered throughout my playthrough, but considering I want this to be a hotspot for Gex Enter the Gecko trivia, I may as well cover them again here. So let's go in order here. For starters, in the options menu, the toggle for Gex's voice isn't completely functional. When you toggle the voice off, Gex will not say anything while roaming around in the levels. This includes quips for encountering various props, attacking enemies, eating flies, getting hurt, and falling into a pit. However, it does not silence Gex when entering and exiting levels and getting an extra life through collectibles. Those scenarios have Gex say similar quotes, ending up with a lot of tail time quips no matter what you do.
It's tail time. It's tail time. Oh yeah, it's tail time. Now that's what I call getting some tail. It's tail time.
I don't know if this oddity is fixed in the UK or Japanese versions of the game, but in the N64 version, the toggle does completely silence Gex when turned off. At the starting point of the Media Dimension hub, if you go past where the secret TVs are, or would be if you didn't unlock any, turn the camera around to see a secret message written on the pediment. The message reads, Jeza, Rich 98, Faith, Hope, Unity. We have a few leads as to who wrote this message. At first, I thought Jeza was a reference to Jeremy Brito, listed in the game's credits as additional support and tester. Jeza is a nickname for people named Jeremy in Britain, so I thought the message might be connected to him. However, his nickname in the credits is J-Dog, and while he could have had multiple nicknames, I wasn't very sure. Somebody asked about this Easter egg on the Gex Discord fairly recently, and somebody came up with a different answer. The Rich in the message might be in reference to Richard Lemerkin, or Lemerchand, however you pronounce it, one of the senior designers for this game. There are many pictures of him with someone named Jeremy Lemerkind, from what I've heard, but I haven't been able to figure this one out, so we'll have to see if that's actually true. The message is not present in the N64 version, and is likely not present in the Japanese version. When you start a new game, there are help crystals in the first part of the Media Dimension hub which tell you about certain actions. However, they disappear when you defeat the first boss at Gilligex Isle. It's as if the crystals were the game's training wheels, which are then removed. Basically, if you make it to the boss and beat it, the game considers you ready. When you tail whip a boss TV, a voice will speak to you. Tail whipping the Gilligex Isle and Gexilla vs. Mecha Rez TVs makes Rez say one of several quotes.
Gecko stew, anyone? A luau with roasted gecko. I hope you'll have an extra kidney. Gecko sashimi, anyone? You'll never stop my creation. Mecha Rez, my ultimate creation. Mecha Rez.
Tail whipping the TV for Channel Z only has Rez say one thing.
You finally met your match, young lizard.
Then there's Mushu Pork. When you tail whip his TV, he has many things he can say.
Time to suffer, little one. Stop running away! You'll never leave here alive! You will pay for that! I'll have your head! Another head! From my collection? You're driving me sane. Run away, reptile! Come and get some! Come closer, little lizard. Chocolate-covered flies, little boy?
While we're at it, tail whipping the gates when they're closed has Rez taunt you, hinting at which boss is upholding them. Here are the lines he will say for each gate.
You will never survive Gilligan's Isle. No one can defeat the Tiki Brothers. You cannot get past the Tiki Brothers. You'll never defeat the evil Mushu. Mushu Orb cannot be destroyed. Just try and defeat Mecha Rez. Mecha Rez will stop you.
The Green Gate and the Lion's Mouth just have Rez laughing. It's possible to skip the 26 red remote requirement to go to No Weddings and a Funeral. You can get past the Lion's Mouth if you do a running tail bounce and enter from the side of the jaw. But since the final boss can't be fought unless you have 33 red remotes, this glitch is kinda useless. It's also significantly easier to do in the N64 version, as it doesn't have the invisible wall the PlayStation version has. In the media dimension, high above the playable map, there are platforms that have the TV monitors for saving via memory card and via password. It's impossible to get to these without a cheating device. I use these cheat codes to reach the platforms. The first and second codes allow Gex to keep rising as long as the jump button is held, a moon jump if you will. The third code allows Gex to jump in midair after he reaches the peak of his jump. This one is more for adjustment purposes. The two platforms are on opposite sides of the map, located directly above the ledge away from the center part of the media dimension hub. The red gate side has the save monitors, and the green gate side has the password monitors. You can access the save and menu screens with Gex visible in this way, but be careful. If you exit the menu while the camera is looking at the monitors, the icons will remain on display. If you try to access the menu again, the game will soft lock, as the game doesn't know what to do if the icons are still on display. The monitors are cleared if the camera is facing away from them. These platforms remain in the N64 version, but unlike the PlayStation version, since saving works differently, these places are completely unseen in normal gameplay. In the canyon area in Out of Tune, there's a purple fly TV at the edge of the map that infinitely respawns purple flies for infinite lives. Once you tail whip the TV, it will reactivate shortly after. There are very few of these regenerative TVs. The only other one that comes to my mind is in fine-tuning inside the castle with the fireflies. Getting to the TV is very tricky. A precise karate kick is needed to reach a ledge on the canyon wall, then you must carefully do a running tail bounce to get to the edge of the map. Also in the canyon area and Out of Tune, if you do a running tail bounce on the railroad sign, there will be a trigger sound. Then when you leave the canyon area, the music is replaced with the construction site music using different instruments. This music persists throughout the whole level and will only stop when you exit the level or lose a life. Strangely, the N64 version has the trigger, but nothing else happens. Going to the N64 exclusive level Gex Cousteau, if you go out of bounds and check behind the big sunken ship, there's a strange cube of fence and rock textures for the level. It was probably just for testing purposes, nothing special. Just thought it was pretty weird. In the level www.com.com, there's a help crystal that is difficult to reach. If you tail whip the spinning platform at the right angle, you can jump to a ledge on the wall and access it. When tail whipped, the crystal displays this message: "Congratulations! Now enter this URL to access the secret Gex webpage, www.crystalD.com/secretgex.html. This URL is no longer live, but thanks to the Wayback Machine, it is partially accessible. The secret Gex webpage would have given you access to a Windows 95 theme and cheat codes for the PlayStation and the N64 version. The non-secret webpage had screenshots, cyber cards, and voice samples from both of Gex's voice actors, Dana Gould and Leslie Phillips. In the Mushu Pork boss fight, there's a secret message that can be activated if you look at the left side of the lab, around the area with the window and the machine with the numbers. If you look around there for a little bit, a message will flash on the top left of the screen. "Hooray for Bunny Gex! He sure is a funny Gex! Rah rah rah!" This can be triggered as many times as you want, but it's easiest if you only hit Mushu Pork once or twice. If he isn't hit at all, he will focus on chasing you and won't stop to laugh at you. If he is hit 3 times, the grates providing a safe spot from the electricity will break and reveal the hot liquid below. If he is hit 4 times, he dies and you win the boss fight. This Easter egg is only available in the PlayStation version, as the N64 version doesn't allow you to look during the boss fight. And I don't know about the PC version, but it probably doesn't have the Easter egg there either. By the way, fun fact, this Easter egg was featured in Oddheader's 10 Strangest Unsolved Video Game Discoveries Part 2. The Mushu Pork boss fight is pretty easy overall, but if you die against Mushu Pork, he will turn around and fart in your direction. How very rude. Still in Mushu Pork, this may be considered disturbing for some. The counter on the right side of the lab has what looks to be a gecko being dissected. It's very difficult to see in normal gameplay, and I didn't expect there to be a clear texture rip of this anywhere if it's not on Gexpedia or the textures resource. So, using DuckStation's VRAM dump and the PSX VRAM tool, I ripped the texture myself. Here's a clear shot of the dissected gecko. Is he thinking of making a new life form that is half gecko? Makes you wonder if that happened to a pig and cow to create Mushu Pork. In The Umpire Strikes Out, there are 2 secret spinning cubes, or more accurately, spinning rectangular prisms. The first one can be found in 2 ways. The first, easier method is to go to the asteroid where there are smaller, harmful red asteroids swirling around a path on it. Then jump to the smaller asteroid with the radio tower. From here, let's assume the direction from the asteroid where you came from and the one with the radio tower is north. There's an invisible, narrow path to the northeast that you must jump to. On the manual camera setting, one quick angle adjustment will let you jump and run straight along the path. Soon enough, you will encounter a secret air station. Turn left from there and follow the newly lit lights. Jump before the 3rd light because there's a small gap there. Gex can grab the ledge, but let's not take any chances. At the end of the invisible path, you will find an air capsule, 2 green fly TVs, and a spinning cube with a picture of a baby on it. Nobody knows the identity of this baby, but it likely belonged to one of the developers during this game's development. The cube can be tail whipped and broken, but nothing happens. Now, the second method to getting to the baby spinning cube is much more precise. Past the checkpoint, there is a section where there are platforms hovering atop one another and the camera is at a fixed angle. At the bottom left platform, a very precise karate kick must be done to the left. It is very easy to miss as the path is narrow. As for the second spinning cube, this one is a lot easier to get to. Atop one of the electric towers, move the camera so that the air capsule is on the left side of the screen. Go forward and jump to see a spinning cube with a picture of one of the developers, presumably Evan Wells, the lead designer of Gex Enter the Gecko, and who would go on to become the president of Naughty Dog. Tail whipping this cube reveals a green fly TV. These cubes are extremely well hidden, with the paths having a hint of visibility only when you take a leap of faith. Still in The Empire Strikes Out, observant players may see a green fly TV hovering in space near the start of the level. There's an invisible path that takes you there into an air capsule and crates for collectibles. Again, the lights only appear when you take the leap of faith. In the N64 version, if Gex runs out of air in the rocket channel levels, you can still quickly pause the game and leave the level before losing a life. This is not possible in the PlayStation version. There are two ways you can save time for the Storm the Castle mission. The first and quickest method is to do a precise karate kick to the dock where the bell is. The second method is to reach the target area and do a running tail bounce over the fence where the slope drops off. Observant players may find mysterious steam hovering beyond the target area where the flowers dance. Jumping in that direction will lead to a green fly TV and 5 collectibles. There's a green fly TV that is sideways on a cliff with 3 collectibles leading to it. It seems impossible to get to, but there is a portion of the cliff you can stick to and get the fly. The only problem is, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible, to make it back alive. Believe me, I've tried many times and got frustrated. It leads me to believe the developers forgot about this wall. The climbing portion is invisible after all. Did you know you can actually jump on some of the buildings in Gexzilla vs. Mecha-Rez? I actually didn't know about it. I was just fooling around one day and noticed you can do it despite the seemingly low jump height. There's not much reason to do this, though. Also, the movie theaters mistakenly spell Gexzilla as Gexilla. Oops. As the final bonus level, Chips and Dips is plastered with background gags featuring pictures of the developers. That much we all know. But did you know there is one other super secret picture that doesn't even have a surefire way to appear? At least not yet. Supposedly, if you make it to the end of Chips and Dips without collecting any more than 34 collectibles, you will see a wall blocking the way to where the gold remote would be located. This is a picture of Jeffrey Zwelling, the producer of Gex Enter the Gecko. One might think the wall is a door that would open when getting all the collectibles, but it's actually breakable. I tried many times to see this Easter egg after having seen it once before, but failed to make it appear ever since. This made me ask several questions to myself. Why is the maximum number of collectibles required such an arbitrary number? Was it meant to be a door or a wall? If it was made to be a breakable wall, did the developers want to remove it? If so, then why does it appear at all? This is such a big mystery to me, and I wonder if anyone will help in solving it. If you exit Channel Z through the pause menu, the normal text on the loading screen will be displayed in a different font. This is the same font used when Rez is in first-person mode, firing missiles at you. This means that the font is changed in the level for this specific occasion. After thwarting Rez once again, Gex hangs out with a red-haired girl in the bedroom and is dressed up for the occasion. This girl is Nikki from another Crystal Dynamics game, Pandemonium. Yes, it has an exclamation point. Players may recognize her from either playing one of the Pandemonium games, or from looking at the back of the manual advertising the game. As a fun fact, Nikki's voice never changes across all the regional releases of Gex Enter the Gecko. Yes, she speaks English in the Japanese version as well. I didn't know this until constantly looking at the credits in my footage, but during the end credits, Gex is not dressed in his secret agent suit like he is when you are in the main menu. I guess he decided to wear his birthday suit instead. Now let's move on to the version differences. I will be talking about the regional releases of the game as well as versions on other consoles. The version of Gex Enter the Gecko I played on my channel is the US version on the PlayStation, released on February 24th, 1998. This version was published by Midway and features Dana Gould, who reprises his role as the voice of Gex. Dana Gould, for those who don't know, was a stand-up comedian, writer, and actor who was featured on networks such as HBO, Showtime, and Comedy Central. He voiced the character Hilarious in the TV series Father of the Bride, wrote for The Simpsons from 2001 to 2007, and has his own podcast called The Dana Gould Hour. In the United Kingdom, the game was titled Gex 3D Enter the Gecko. This version was published by BMG Interactive Entertainment and was released on April 3rd, 1998. Instead of Dana Gould voicing Gex in the UK, we have a longtime TV star in Leslie Phillips, who is featured in films and TV from 1938 all the way until 2015. I have no idea why Crystal Dynamics decided to change voice actors for the UK, but my guess is that he knew the UK's taste in pop culture more than anyone else given his long television career. Or it could also be that some people were fed up with hearing Dana Gould in the first Gex game, as evidenced by this excerpt from the magazine. Also, can I just say that after growing up with Gould as the voice for so long, Philip's voice just feels odd?
Hello, ladies. Darling, sweetie. Lock and load, little lizard.
Like he sounds old, wise, and confident, which is totally not what I expect from Gex. Also, a thing about Gex is that he does many impressions of various TV characters and celebrities, and Phillips doesn't do that.
Cut my eyes, I can't see.
Cut my eyes, I can't see. You're despicable. You're despicable.
He even misses the joke about having helium in the oxygen tank.
Alright, who put helium in the oxygen tank?
Alright, who put helium in the oxygen tank?
I feel like he was given very little voice direction for Gex. Anyway, Leslie Phillips was known for his exclamation "ding dong" when playing the character Jack Bell in Carry On Nurse, which Phillips as Gex references himself.
Ding dong.
He's also known for being the voice of the Sorting Hat in the Harry Potter films. Interestingly, to accommodate for the new voice actor, the 100% ending music is changed. I'll give you a sample of the song.
Hello, ladies. Ding dong. Lock and load. It's tail time. It's tail time. It's tail time.
The UK version has a few minor differences in the opening narration.
For 2 years, I started my day watching Kung Fu theater,
days, then weeks blurred into one long, greasy telethon.
For 2 years, I started my day watching supermarkets sweep. Days, then weeks blurred into one long, sorry afternoon chat show.
There's another difference in what Gex says in the ending after shutting off Rez's TV.
How's about we forget all this and go play catch in the yard?
How about we forget all this and go and play footy in the garden?
To wrap this up, Gex says different things from the US version, possibly to cater more to the UK audience and match with Leslie Phillips' own charm. He also seems to have less quotes according to the Sounds resource folder. Now, in other European regions outside of the UK, the game had its title changed to Gex 3D Return of the Gecko. Nobody seems to know for sure why this sudden change occurred, but it is to be believed that it was to avoid a potential lawsuit with Warner Brothers due to their ownership of the film Enter the Dragon starring Bruce Lee. Why don't you tell that to Spyro then? The last region this game was released in was in Japan, and let me tell you that things get confusing here. Published by Bandai, Gex Enter the Gecko was released in Japan on September 1998. Except it wasn't called Gex at all. The game was titled Spin Tail, and along with that, Gex's name was changed to Reno. Even though the first Gex game, which did release in Japan, was named Gex, and the Gecko himself was still Gex. Say Gex. As a matter of fact, Reno is no longer a gecko, instead he's a monitor dick? What the hell is that supposed to mean? Oh, the term dick is slang for detective. I don't think I ever would have known otherwise. Reno is never even referred to as a gecko, but rather a lizard-like creature that has acquired the mysterious ability to move freely within a TV monitor. So, we don't even know what Reno is? I am really confused. Furthermore, Rez was renamed to Ronald. Or Ronaldo? I'm gonna say Ronaldo. Anyway, this Reno character was voiced by Mitsuo Senda, who voice acted for many Japanese anime and dubbed many Western films. He was known for being the voice of Dave McCarthy from the Golgo 13 TV series, and of Seiryu in the Yu Yu Hakusho TV series.
助けてくれ！爆弾だ！一丁、やりますか？やる？皆さん、私についてきなさい！ Up to me！ ダメダメ、まだまだ防御が甘いよ甘い！よいしょ！よーく見ろよ！英語でディープルック、あれだ。
It's also worth noting that while Bruce Robertson voiced Rez in the US and European releases, Ronaldo, as he's called in Spin Tail, is also voiced by Mitsuo Senda. Aside from dialogue, a significant change for the Japanese version of the game is that the majority of text is removed from the game, particularly in the level icons and background gags. The level icons were modified to make use of space without text. Even the tickers below the screen on the level TVs don't have any text, and this is quite a sin. Was it really hard to change the text for those to be Japanese? The level names are only visible now on the remote tally screen and the mission select screen. Even Gexzilla vs. Mecha-Rez, a level that references Godzilla, which takes place in Tokyo, mind you, has its Japanese text removed. What the flying Funko Pop? Interestingly, pretty much all of Indragnet is kept intact. Overall, it seemed like Gex just lost a lot of its charm in the transition to the East. I guess it's no wonder they didn't bother releasing Gex 3 in Japan. Gex Enter the Gecko also had a version released on the Nintendo 64 titled Gex 64 Enter the Gecko. Because as we all know, if it's on the 64, it's gotta have the 64. The N64 version of Enter the Gecko was released in the US in September 1998, and in Europe in October that same year. according to N64 magazine. It was rather unfortunate that Gex clung on to the Nintendo 64 seed during a time when a certain Baron Bird had one of the best games on the platform just months earlier. Oh well, Real-Time Associates was tasked with bringing the Gecko onto the Nintendo 64, and the game was published by Midway in the US and GT Interactive Software in Europe. Since the game went from a disc to a cartridge, a lot of content had to be minimized or cut entirely. Because the N64 had such little memory in comparison to the PlayStation, certain background gags would become unreadable if left as is, so they would either be modified or cut entirely. A few things also had to be toned down to conform to Nintendo's policies, such as alcoholic beverages being replaced with ice cream cones. This led to the game being rated E for everyone instead of T for teen. Oh wait, actually the T rating wasn't a thing for Gex Enter the Gecko in '98, but it was T for teen for Gex 3. Oh well. The amount of quips Gex can say has also been reduced drastically. Over 600 quips in the PlayStation version were trimmed down to just 111. Rez and Mushu Pork have many of their lines cut as well. The way Gex speaks is slightly different too. In the N64 version, Gex will say something after a certain amount of time has passed. He still has a few lines while tail whipping something, grabbing ledges, and entering and exiting levels, but many other scenarios don't prompt him to say anything. He doesn't say anything when getting hurt, eating a fly, or falling into a pit. One normal level, Poltergex, 2 bonus levels, I Got the Reruns in Trouble in Uranus, and the 3 secret levels, Lava Dabba Doo, Texas Chainsaw Manicure, and Mazed and Confused, are all cut. A new normal level named Gex Cousteau is now located where the 3 secret levels originally were. All that cut content for an underwater level that is slow to go through? I don't think that's a fair trade. So now that the secret levels are gone, what does that mean for the bonus levels and the gold remotes you get there? Well, that is a great question, and for that I will give you a great answer. Absolutely nothing. Those gold remotes no longer do anything. That also means obtaining silver remotes is meaningless. The ending isn't changed at all no matter how many remotes you have, and there's not even a real ending. It's just a reel showing you where some of the hidden remotes are and if you got them. Did nobody think about this? Overall, Gex 64 is a serviceable but inferior version to that on the PlayStation. If you are given a choice between the PlayStation and N64 versions, there is no reason for you to pick the N64 version unless all you have is a Nintendo 64. But even then, there were better games that were already released or were about to be released, so why invest in the Gecko? Unless you're really into lizards like me, there's not much reason. There is a PC version of the game that was released sometime after the Nintendo 64 version in 1998. Developed by LTI Grey Matter and published by Midway in the US and Ubisoft in Europe, the PC version of Gex Enter the Gecko plays very similarly to the PlayStation version, but it has less music tracks and plays them using a different sound font. Overall, the changes are somewhat minimal, so this version doesn't really seem worth going in depth over. Finally, there is one last version, the Game Boy Color version. Released in the US in December 1998 and Europe some month that same year, this version was developed by David A. Palmer Productions and published by Crave Entertainment in the US and Interplay in Europe. So, in total, across all regions and console versions, Gex Enter the Gecko had 4 development teams and 7 publishers. Maybe that video game donkey joke had some truth in it. Anyway, Gex Enter the Gecko on the Game Boy Color is a surprisingly faithful adaptation of the console versions, featuring most of the levels excluding the Rocket Channel's unique bonus channels and bosses before Rez. The animation quality is pretty good too. I'd say this could have a solid job of bringing Gex to the Game Boy Color, if it weren't for two tremendous flaws. First, the controls. For some reason, pressing two buttons at the exact same time does nothing. There are many times where you will try to jump and move, but nothing happens. You release the B button, because the B button is used to jump going against the standard, and walk into a pit or hazard you were trying to jump over. If you know this, you could get used to it over time, but my goodness, how did nobody catch this during testing? And second, the sound programming is awful. The sound effects are decent, the music, a chiptune rendition of various songs in the PlayStation soundtrack, is decent too, except for Rezopolis, that gives me a headache. However, the sound effects that constantly play when jumping, attacking, or getting collectibles interrupt one of the sound channels and the auditory experience becomes unenjoyable. You're actually better off just playing the game with the volume off. Don't even worry about Gex saying anything because he doesn't. The only way he can communicate to you is by constantly looking at you, staring into your eyes, trying to tell you that he's trapped in a primitive piece of hardware that won't allow him to speak without the cartridge exploding. Or at least that's what I like to think. David A. Palmer Productions, you tried. But those two problems are enough to bog down the experience to something mildly unenjoyable. Something else that doesn't help this game out is its release in December of 1998. If somebody with a Game Boy or Game Boy Color wanted a game for Christmas, the top wanted game wouldn't be this game, it would be Mother Flavin' Pokemon. That franchise was taking over the world. Gex stood no chance in the handheld gaming market. If I may say one more thing, the battle against Rez, the only boss in the game, is insulting. Channel Z starts out interesting with a chase, and Gex needs to outrun Rez before he can kill Gex. But in the next section, Rez literally just sits in the center of the room, fist pounding, as Gex activates the switches to drop TVs on Rez's head. He doesn't fight at all. What the hell? The ending doesn't even show anything, so there's little sense of accomplishment for being the game on top of the other problems I mentioned. I mean, seriously, imagine going from this to this. Unbelievable. Now let's delve into some miscellaneous trivia. It seemed at one point that Freddy Krueger gloves would have been collectibles. It is unknown which collectible replaced them, but it is highly likely that they were removed from the game due to copyright concerns. Did you know that the shades that Gex wears in his promotional material are Oakley's? Specifically, they are Oakley Eye Jacket Iridium sunglasses. This is further proven by the copyright information displayed on the back of the box for the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 versions. If you are running Gex Enter the Gecko on the PlayStation 2, there is a sound glitch that tends to occur. After exiting a level and returning to the media dimension, the music and sound effects get messed up and it overall sounds horrible. If I had to guess what was going on, every level has its own sound table that it loads when entering, but the sound table fails to deload when returning to the media dimension. The only evidence I have of this being true is that the instruments and sound effects used are from the level you exited from. Crystal Dynamics created an engine for Gex Enter the Gecko to run on called the Crystal Engine. This engine allowed for fully textured 3D environments without sacrificing frame rate or detail.
How are you guys able to achieve that on the PlayStation?
We pretty much have two of the best programmers in the business. Adrian Longland and Danny Chan were the first people, as far as we know, in North America or any English-speaking country to throw away the Sony tools and they just rewrote them from scratch.
Furthermore, the 3D models would be made using a skeletal bone mesh structure rather than polygons, which prevented the models from tearing at certain camera angles. This mesh can be thought of as wearing a skin or cover.
We actually have one sort of bag which makes up Gex, and in order to animate him, you just stretch the bag in different directions. You won't get any pop, and I think no matter how close you get, he holds up.
This also made it easier for Gex's lips to move accurately as he speaks. The Crystal engine would later evolve into the Foundation engine in 2014, where it would be used for the newer Tomb Raider games as well as Marvel's Avengers. The track used for the Prehistory channel is reused in a rather unlikely place. It's used in the game Walt Disney World Quest Magical Racing Tour. Wow, that's a mouthful. Let's just call it Magical Racing Tour from now on. Magical Racing Tour is a racing game with tracks based on Disney World. Released for the PlayStation and Dreamcast in 2000, this game was also developed by Crystal Dynamics. Jim Hedges worked on the game's soundtrack, and he also composed some songs for Gex Enter the Gecko and Gex 3 Deep Cover Gecko. The track for Dinosaur, yes, with the exclamation point attached, uses a slightly altered version of the Prehistory channel song from Enter the Gecko. Have a listen. I might as well go ahead and mention that Blizzard Beach in Magical Racing Tour shares the same song as Gex 3's holiday broadcasting song, but replaces Gex 3's main motif with Deck the Halls. Have a listen. Another fun fact while we're here, the PlayStation and Dreamcast versions of Magical Racing Tour have the Frosty the Snowman section of the song removed, but the Game Boy version retains it. Yeah, there's a Game Boy version. Why? Now let's get into some unused music tracks. While the presence of these unused tracks has been around since the PSFs were hosted on video game music archives, I don't think they've ever been documented, so I'm excited to present this to you all. The music tracks use an ID that tells you which levels they would play in, and they are all assigned to their corresponding sound libraries. Many sound files are duplicated, presumably assigned to each level and even those of the same level category. Here are the files that I noticed were unused. This is actually the same fanfare that plays in the Nintendo 64 version when you successfully complete a mission and get a red remote. As a side note, a similar fanfare plays in Gex 3 Deep Pocket Gecko, that's the Game Boy Color version of Gex 3, when you complete a mission. This track alongside the Reward Get track, Lose a Life track, and Game Over track are seemingly duplicated across all the levels. The !extra folders contents are evidence of this. Let's move on to the other tracks. It seems like these two tracks are related. It looks like it would belong with the Teetering Girders, but I have no sure idea. Well, I personally would use this as a sort of failure fanfare. No idea where this could have been used. The next two would have played somewhere in Pain in the Asteroids. There's one last unused track in Gex Enter the Gecko, and it would have played in the Prehistory channel given the ID of the song. Unlike the others, this is an honest-to-goodness full song with looping. It sounds like ambience and probably would have played navigating some section, perhaps a cave? Have a listen for a while. One day, I was curious to know just how many voice clips there were in the N64 version of Gex Enter the Gecko. So I decided to use the N64 sound list tool to rip the sound effects from the game to see exactly how many lines Gex has in that version. It's a pretty easy tool to use, provided you have the ROMs dumped for it. In total, there are 111 Gex voice clips, 10 Rez voice clips, and 3 Mushu Pork voice clips. I found some of Gex's voice clips to be unused. I've never heard some of them across my many playthroughs of the N64 version. So the amount of used clips from Gex is probably around 80 or so. With that said, I was astonished with 3 lines in particular, as they appear to be N64 exclusive. The first line, "Hey lady!" can be said when Gex tail whips an enemy. Players are bound to hear this line at some point in their playthroughs, but the second and third lines, as far as I know, are unused. The second line, "3 more and I have the whole set," is a variation of Gex's existing line, "3 more and I have the whole set." Both variations are found in the N64 files, but only the latter is found in the PlayStation version. None of these lines are used in the N64 version, as no lines are said when getting collectibles there. The third line
We got a 211 in progress.
is a variation of Gex's existing line.
We got a 211 in progress, baby.
Again, both variations are in the N64 files, and the PlayStation version only has the latter. The latter line, however, is used in the N64 version, which Gex can say in either the Media Dimension hub or the Spy Who Loved Himself. I'm sorry to say, viewers, but the story in the manual is nowhere near as much of a trip as with the first Gex game. That said, there are a few interesting and humorous things I want to highlight in the game's manual. First off, while discussing the levels, many pop culture references are spouted out. One thing that got me tilting my head in confusion was this thing about Kappa Feelbots in Rezopolis. I thought there were enemies in the game called that, but when discussing with somebody on Discord about it, they told me that Kappa Feel was a term used to describe somebody inappropriately and non-consensually touching somebody, usually a woman. So, you get a Kappa Feel. Nobody seems to use that term anymore. I just really wanted to talk about it. Onto the stories section, labeled as Mission Briefing. After Gex saved the Media Dimension in the first Gex game, he had a press conference with the President of the United States, mobs of groupies surrounded him, several TV interviews, and compromising photos taken of him in the International Enquirer. The memories of these events gave Gex a headache, so he retired from the public's eye in 1996 and once again took refuge in watching television. Tucked away on the Maui hillside, he and his TV were in a wonderful partnership. He could even turn the TV off if he needed some quiet time, and the TV wouldn't complain. 2 years later, in 1998, some government goons looking like the Blues Brothers stepped into Gex's residence to inquire with him about an old friend. Look, the Inquirer got it all wrong. I only met with Farah that one night. I don't want her bothering me again. It wasn't about her. It was about Rez. The goons wanted Gex to get back into the Media Dimension to make him disappear. Come on, I saved the universe once already. Why don't you bother somebody else? I'm missing Colt Seavers, and I just love his gullible sidekick. They needed him because he seemed to know the most about Rez, having confronted him before, so with no other option, they whacked him upside the head with a crowbar and took him to the interrogation room. Ouch. After being successfully bribed with a suitcase full of cold hard cash, they give him a secret agent suit custom made for him and tell him to hide Rez's body between Jimmy Hoffa's and Spuds McKenzie's. When he gets to the car, a beautiful woman agent walks up to him and introduces herself as Agent Extra, likely the same Agent Extra from the third game. She wishes him good luck and tells him with a giggle that she really loves television too. Getting into the limo, Gex smiles and says to himself, "Alright, Rez, it's tail time." Various merchandise was either sold or displayed to advertise the game. A Gex Enter the Gecko sticker for the PlayStation 1 disc cover was included in issue 8 of the American PlayStation magazine. 2 standees were made to promote Gex Enter the Gecko, the first of which was rectangular and about 6 feet tall, featuring an image of Gex displayed between a woman's legs, possibly a reporter since she's holding a microphone. According to the seller of this standee on eBay, it was never displayed in stores and is one of a kind. We don't know why it was never displayed, but it was featured in the 100% ending of the game. The second standee was used to advertise the N64 release of Enter the Gecko. This one is a large cutout of Gex with the logo and some promotional images on the bottom. This is the only image available of this particular standee, and it's difficult to make out the measuring tape to see precisely how high it is. I can somewhat make out the 12-inch interval, so the standee seems to be about 4 feet tall. A preview disc of Gex Enter the Gecko was given out in an October issue of an unspecified magazine. Something that caught my eye about this is that on the back of the case, it claims that the N64 and PlayStation versions were meant to release simultaneously, and the N64 version would have 2 unique levels. Ultimately, the N64 version released later than the PlayStation version, and the only exclusive level it has is Gex Cousteau. A Tips and Tricks collector's card for Gex Enter the Gecko was included in an issue of the German magazine Mickey Mouse Magazine. The card includes cheat codes for the PlayStation version of the first 2 Gex games, and passwords for the N64 and Game Boy Color versions of Enter the Gecko. Many posters and magazine ads were made to advertise the game, usually parodying other movies, as is the nature of Gex. Several of these were shown in the 100% ending, but there were some additional advertisements for the N64 version. By the way, I really like this one and what it says. They could have taken anything. His home, his pride, even his freedom. But they took away television. Now it's personal. I love that. Shortly after the release of Enter the Gecko, there was a contest to win a free Gex t-shirt. Ads for this contest were shown on the back of other Crystal Dynamics games. To enter, contestants had to purchase both the first Gex and Gex Enter the Gecko for the PlayStation. Then they must fill out their information on a postcard and mail it, and their game receipts, to Crystal Dynamics. Receipts must have been dated no later than September 30th, 1998, and the deadline for the contest was October 31st, 1998. The t-shirt is white with a headshot of Gex on top of a blue vertical stripe. The back shows the secret agent outfit Gex with the Gex Enter the Gecko logo, with the Crystal Dynamics and Midway logo below. Strangely, the logo has the 64 on it, possibly to advertise the N64 release, despite the mock-up on the ad not having the 64. Each shirt that has appeared online was an adult XL size. The shirts probably were made in different sizes, but due to the lack of archived Crystal Dynamics PS1 manuals on the internet with the postcard, I don't know for sure. The manufacturer of the shirts was Delta Pro Weight. They also manufactured another promotional t-shirt with the Gex Enter the Gecko logo on the front, and the promotional image of Gex standing between a woman's legs on the back. It's unknown how this t-shirt was distributed, but it may have been given away at events and during contests to promote the game. One last t-shirt was a purple shirt with the series logo on the front, and on the back is an image of the secret agent Gex against a black background with the text, "Go ahead, push my buttons." The shirt was distributed by Tooltex. The origin of this t-shirt is unknown, but the previous owner had it in storage for many years along with 2 other Gex shirts, according to Gexpedia. Possibly the other previously mentioned t-shirts? While we're on the topic of advertisements, I can't forget about the commercial for this game. In the TV commercial, Gex talks to a woman on the phone, revealing details about the TV in her house, or in the shorter version, asking her if she wants to see him change channels with his tongue. She asks, "Where are you?" To which Gex replies, "Open the drapes." She does, and screams in fear as Gex smiles and growls at her. To the clueless viewer, they might perceive Gex as some sort of stalker or sexual predator. In actuality, though, this commercial is a parody of the phone call scene in the beginning of the 1996 movie Scream, which was very popular at the time. The movie itself, with its satirical and self-aware takes on the horror movie genre, was surely inspiring material for the Gex team. Around the time of Gex Enter the Gecko's release, a Gex statue was created for the Crystal Dynamics studio. The statue features Gex in his secret agent outfit, posing in a similar fashion as he does in most promotional material, except he's placing his left foot on a red box with the Gex logo. This was one of many statues for the studio representing their franchises. As of July 26, 2023, the statue is now located in Retro Respawn, a video game store in Arleta, Los Angeles, California. Dylan Thorpe, the owner of the store, had his eye on the statue after a middleman connected him to a console variant Discord. He did a little research on Gex, and after seeing it was one of a kind, he decided it was worth buying, especially since it would be sold for much cheaper than if it were sold on a kiosk website. The statue was owned by a Microsoft representative who won it in a charity auction for around $2,000, and he sold it to Thorpe for that same price. Honestly, reading the Medium article where I got this information felt surreal to me, talking about Gex's history and the fandom of today. The link to the article will be in the description. Now it's time for some cheat codes. We got a new batch of them for this game, so let's get it going. To begin inputting a cheat code, simply pause the game, hold L2 or R2, and press the buttons in the right order. Now, I've read in various sites that you have to highlight exit first, and you have to hold L2 specifically, but you just have to pause the game, hold L2 or R2, and press the buttons. Just like the first game's cheat codes, each code spells out a keyword that allows for easy memorization. Each controller input represents a letter that will spell out the keyword. These cheat codes toggle variables, so inputting the cheat code again will turn the cheat off. Here's a list of cheat codes for the game. As far as we know, there don't seem to be any cheat codes for any of the other versions of Enter the Gecko, just the PlayStation version. Code Undead and Code Weasel are pretty standard and self-explanatory cheat codes, so I'll explain the others in more detail. Code Earwax toggles the stage timer. While in a level, a timer will appear on the bottom left of the screen. The timer only stops when you collect the red remote. It continues during cutscenes, including the mission preview, and while obtaining a reward after getting enough collectibles. Furthermore, if you go to the remote tally screen by pressing select in the Media Dimension hub, and hold square while highlighting a level, you can see the best time for each mission. Code Allowed toggles voice activation mode. When active, simply press the select button and Gex will say a random voice clip in the game's voice library. Any clips that would have been unused are activated through this cheat.
This ain't like fighting an old man in a brown dress, is it, Cream Puff? I feel like I'm in Parliament Funkadelic's dressing room. There's a joke here about snail trails, but I'm not gonna tell it. Look! A turd holding a flashlight. Why don't you come with me, little girl, on a magic carpet ride? No nude geckos? Not interested. I would read the Watchtower, but I'd rather gouge my eyes out.
Gex is also able to say Rez and Mushu's voice lines, resulting in some pretty cursed imagery.
You will pay for that!
Have you ever wondered how Gex might sound if the PlayStation skipped at the precise moment? No? Well, too bad, because there's a cheat code for that. By inputting the code senseless, you can now listen to Gex say things very strangely without needing to meticulously scratch your disc.
Forget about it! Forget about it!
Humor aside, this cheat is, on the surface, similar to the voice activation cheat, except you don't have control over when Gex says something, and he will say random voice clips at a set interval, which is about every 15 seconds. Something else the cheat does is, whenever Gex says something that he is supposed to say, for example, his lines for entering a level, After his quip is finished, the line will repeat at a particular point, and Gex's mouth will just continue to move for a while, despite not saying anything.
Ladies and gentlemen, the new fall TV season.
Also, when exiting a level, his animation for jumping in the TV will loop until he's finished talking.
It's tail time!
Furthermore, there are some level intro lines that have horrifying effects.
Captain, they are a bizarre alien race that find Adam Sandler funny. Quadro.
That buzz scared the heck out of me my first time witnessing it. Anyway, this cheat is mainly just for fun, or to give others nightmares. Take your pick. Code Release toggles the level select menu. Simply press select to bring up a menu and choose which level you want to go to. Pressing select while standing still in the media dimension hub will bring up both the level select menu and the save menu, so if you're in the hub, it's best to jump or move when pressing select. Here are the levels and their corresponding IDs. Strangely, the Poltergeist level ID is Train 30 instead of Horror something. So maybe Poltergeist was intended to be a different kind of level? But nope, more horror levels! According to the cutting room floor, selecting map 8 would crash the game when chosen in the media dimension. But when I tried it on Duck Station, it just sent me to the ending cutscene without issue. I guess map 8 is supposed to be the main menu map. Something to note about the level select code is that if you complete a mission, you will be sent to the start of the media dimension hub. So, do keep that in mind. Debug mode is back. Input the code Wonderland to toggle debug mode. While it's active, pausing with the start button is disabled, and the select button opens up the debug menu. I'll give you the lowdown for what each option does. First off, we have short stats and simply short stats. Toggle on short stats to show Gex's X, Y, and Z coordinates. Toggle on short stats to show Gex's coordinates and some other technical data. The level select menu is similar to the one we saw before, just with the option to go back to the main debug menu. Then we have the collectibles menu. This is a sub-menu that interacts with your collectibles, obviously. The first two options, get all remotes and lose all remotes, are exactly what they say on the tin. However, it only affects your silver and gold remotes. The red remotes are left untouched. Next is the remote cheat. Toggle this on to set your remote totals to match the values assigned below. There are a few oddities with this. You cannot go above 34 red remotes in this menu. It seems this cheat cannot give you the red remotes from No Weddings and a Funeral, or the 3 bonus levels unlocked with gold remotes. Even still, 34 red remotes is enough to beat the game. The remote tallying can get a little janky. When you choose Get All Remotes while the remote cheat is on, then toggle the cheat off, the game only adds 14 silver remotes and gives no additional gold remotes. If you fool around with these options in the red remote tally, you may even have some red remotes taken from you, and you'd have to clear the missions again to reclaim them. Finally, the maximum number of gold remotes you can have in your inventory through the debug mode is 13. Which is one more than you would be able to get in a normal playthrough. This indicates that Channel Z would have had a collectible gold remote. Or perhaps you do get it when defeating Rez and you just never see it. Lastly, in this submenu are the Tier 1, 2, and 3 collectibles. This one is straightforward, so I don't need to explain it much. Do note, however, that you cannot earn the silver reward remote by simply setting the collectibles to 30, 40, and 50. You must set the counter below those numbers, then manually collect the last collectible in a tier to get it. Selecting debug menu cheats off turns the debug menu cheat off, but anything set in that menu will persist until the game is turned off, or if you change it around in the debug menu, of course. Interestingly, if you activate the debug mode in Channel Z, the font will be the same font used in Rez's POV. It's just like with how the font is changed when you quit the level and the loading screen has that font as well. Additionally, the remote cheat and adjustable counters for said cheat are replaced with a single gold remote toggle. Toggle this on and you will get the elusive Channel Z gold remote. Feel free to exit and save, and you'll finally get that sweet, sweet 100% file on your memory card. While we're still here, the position values on Rez's POV and on the short stats are the same, with the former in hexadecimal format and the latter in the normal numerical format. So that's a really cool detail. There is one last cheat code that exists in the game, but there's one problem. Nobody seems to know what it does. So just like the other cheat codes, you must pause the game and hold L2 or R2 while entering the cheat. This cheat code is right triangle, right triangle, right triangle. So, rah, rah, rah. A sound indicates a correct combination of buttons is inputted, but seemingly nothing happens. I tried going through levels and pressing all the buttons on the controller, but there was nothing. This cheat is listed on the cutting room floor as the Ghost Cam cheat. The term Ghost Cam was used in the debug menu of a prototype for the game Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, which was another game developed by Crystal Dynamics. According to the cutting room floor page there, the Ghost Cam allows the camera to go through solid objects and geometry. I tried moving the camera through the walls in Gex Enter the Gecko, and nope. The camera still gets stuck and makes the cuckoo sound. So what else could there be? Looking at the article's history, the Ghost Cam section has been there since February 2012. And all this time, nobody knows what it actually does. Back then, it was called the Free Movement Cheat, with a question mark at the end. It's possible that would be it, because there's a GameShark code for a mega cheat that enables all the previously listed cheats, as well as a declip mode. This declip mode is toggled when going into the debug menu and selecting debug menu cheats off. With the mega cheat on, the debug menu doesn't have to be reactivated. From there, the start button doesn't bring up the pause menu, but instead holding start and pressing up will make Gex float in the air. Using the D-pad without holding start, you can move Gex along the X and Y axes, while holding start and using the D-pad allows Gex to move along the X and Z axes. Floating can be disabled by holding start and pressing down. And since it's called declip mode, you can go through walls using this cheat. Really cool cheat to discover things out of bounds. Maybe that's how the Empire Strikes Out Easter eggs were discovered. With this knowledge, I enabled both the Wonderland and Rah 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 cheats, thinking the declip mode would be activated with the previously mentioned method. To my dismay, it didn't work. Gex did not float or clip through any walls. Eager for more information, I checked the source of the information, a forum post on gamehacking.org, but there was basically no further discussion about it. It seems I've hit a roadblock. Clearly the cheat is a thing. If it wasn't, I wouldn't have heard a confirmation sound upon entering it. Just to make extra sure, I entered every cheat code manually to replicate the effects of the GameShark mega cheat. Sure enough, the declip mode is not functional without that mega cheat. The start button does disable this time, but Gex won't float or clip through walls. I have a theory based on all this, that the Rah 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 cheat is bugged. I think it's supposed supposed to turn on, but something in the game's code might be in conflict with the cheat. It's also possible that the cheat effect was erased in the final build, but the ability to input the code is still present. If there are any hackers on the scene, it would be an honor to the Gex community if you can solve the mystery of this cheat code and tell us why it doesn't work. But anyway, that's all the cheat codes. Whew. Now that was a lot we had to discuss. Honestly, it was a lot more than I thought I was going to discuss. But don't worry, we're almost home. The last thing I want to talk about in this bonus episode is a little more on the subjective side. I want to talk about Gex and Rez as characters. There isn't too much for me to say about Gex here that I haven't covered in the first game's bonus video I did, so this section will mostly be about what I discovered about Rez's character. Rez is a far more prominent character in Enter the Gecko compared to the rest of the series, so I think it is best to talk about him here. So, without further ado, let's discuss. First off, let's try to figure out who Rez is. It is unknown where Rez came from or how he came to be. In the first Gex game, his appearance was entirely mechanical. The only thing that was known about him there was that he was the overlord of the media dimension, and that he had the power to suck others into it by configuring a device and jamming his arm through the screen to grab them. That's how Gex entered the media dimension at first. I forgot to mention this in my first Gex videos, but one of the original plans for the first game was to have the bosses be other people who were pulled into the media dimension and mind-controlled by Rez. This ended up not being implemented in the final game, as were many other ideas. Anyway, Rez was omnipresent throughout the media dimension thanks to his TV underlings. He was overthrown from his reign over the media dimension thanks to Gex. Gex Enter the Gecko seems like it wanted to flesh out Rez a little more by giving him a little more flesh, and a larger overall presence. In his effort to take back the media dimension, he has put his image all over the dimension once again in the form of reliefs, portraits, and graffiti. He seems to be messing around within the levels, writing derogatory messages toward Gex, trying to make him feel unwelcome. Or perhaps in some cases, more welcome? Anyway, he also repeatedly taunts Gex in the media dimension hub when he interacts with Gates or a boss TV. Rezopolis, Rez's nerve center, underwent a makeover and is representative of the grungy dystopian future that he wants to create. Before I delve into Rezopolis, there's a question I am sure many of you coming into this video have in your head and are dying to ask. Is Rez actually Gex's father? There has been an ongoing debate within the Gex community about whether or not Rez is actually Gex's father. In the ending FMV of Gex Enter the Gecko, Rez says after his defeat,
Gex, it is me, your father.
Considering how the Gex games play into a bunch of references to pop culture, it is no surprise that there would be a Darth Vader is Luke's father joke, aka the spoiler that is no longer a spoiler. I had always assumed it was just a throwaway line, but some people, including those writing for game magazines, believe that Rez really is Gex's father. I mean, the staff behind the game would definitely play that card, right? At first I thought it was kind of ridiculous, but as I delved deeper into the topic, I never thought that Crystal Dynamics would play as hard as they did throughout the series, teasing that Rez might be Gex's father, but never actually confirming it. So, let's go over everything that teases this familial relationship. Some of what I discuss will be from Gex 3 Deep Cover Gecko, others will be stuff from outside the games. First off, there was an error in the top 10 list of why it's cool to be Gex. At number 5 it states, Dad is a megalomaniac TV killer who happens to dress like the Tin Man. Gex quickly states that it was a mistake and that it was for the Son of Ross Perot top 10 list. The true number 5 is never mentioned. Rez's design in Gex Enter the Gecko is more like a cyborg than a full-on robot like in the first game. He shows green with purple stripes on his arms, which is similar to what is on Gex's back. In 2019, during an April Fool's Takeover event, a user on Twitter asked Crystal Dynamics where Gex has been in recent years, to which they replied, "Rez put him in timeout." While probably not canon, in the Gex novelization, this exchange of dialogue happens when Gex is about to shut Rez off during a flashback of the second game's ending. "Listen to me, Gex," Rez said, his hands pressed against the inside of the screen. "I have something to tell you." "I'm listening," I said. "What's the hurry? You're not going anywhere." "Gex," Rez began, "I am your father." Now that I was not expecting. But Mom, told me you were dead, I replied, hiding my shock. "No, I wasn't killed in that NASA accident," Rez explained. "I was just hideously deformed, and it made me hateful. I will rule all of TV, and you won't stop me." Since I don't have the novel myself, I would like to thank the Roy Teal 96 for providing this snippet in his video about Rez being Gex's father. For context, Gex's father worked for NASA, and he, along with 10 others, volunteered to eat tapioca pudding in zero gravity. The rocket they were on exploded on the launch pad due to a Band-Aid floating in one of the fuel tanks. NASA called Gex's mother to inform her of the incident. While we're here, here's some food for thought. The story never mentioned Gex's father actually dying when his mother got the phone call. It was only after he and his family moved that the story talked about his father's death. So, perhaps NASA never directly stated that Gex's father died from the explosion. Next up, in Gex 3, the battle against Rez takes place in a space station. Gex dresses up as an astronaut, and Rez's battle arena has a background similar to that of the Death Star from Star Wars, further playing into the reference. Finally, in the ending of Gex 3, when Gex rescues Agent Extra and spends some quality time with her, this exchange of dialogue happens.
And then, after he showed me his entire collection of Star Trek bloopers, he asked me to marry him. Actually, he insisted.
That's my dad. Good thing I got you out of there when I did.
Gex's seemingly sarcastic remark that it's his dad to Agent Extra is enough to raise some eyebrows, if it's not the scene that it takes place in. However, there is also the mention of Rez's collection of Star Trek bloopers. I want to give credit to Seedy for noticing that many of Gex's quips, at least in Enter the Gecko, are references to Star Trek. Perhaps Gex's dad introduced him to Star Trek and he became hooked ever since. As for Rez's appearance and his mentioning of falling into a scrap heap, it's common in fiction for cyborgs to be made using scrap metal to save their life after an accident. Here are just a few examples. There's the $6 million man who received bionic replacements for parts of his body after a test flight accident almost killed him. There's Cutty Flam, aka Frankie from One Piece, who suffered fatal injuries after trying to stop a train and managed to build himself a new mechanical body to sustain himself. There's Cyborg from the DC Universe, who got most of his body made into machine after an injury in a scientific accident that killed his mother. Then we have full-body cyborgs like Anakin Skywalker, who became Darth Vader after severe burns and internal injuries in the aftermath of an intense battle against Obi-Wan Kenobi. Rez is a cyborg who is superficially unrecognizable as being related to Gex or any Gecko. He is heavily armored, has no lower half, and his brain seems to be comprised of little more than TV noise. Nobody would ever want to welcome someone who looks as freakish and alien as him, so the only thing he can do is take over the world through the means of media, especially TV. The last thing I want to mention are the many images of Gex all across the media dimension throughout the series. Several of the enemies Gex encounters in the first game are Gecko variants of famous characters. There's a prehistoric Gecko enemy in the second game, and there are many images of Gex plastered throughout the media dimension as background gags in the second and third games. Is it possible that Rez is trying to recreate his son, since his real son would never recognize him, and that these images are but flawed recreations? Perhaps he longs for that fatherly love, and the only way to do it involves hurting or even killing Gex, so that somehow he can make it so he can finally accept him as his father. Overall, there are a lot of clues pointing to Rez being Gex's father, yet despite this, there is no confirmation that this is the case. I want to say that this is intentional to keep people talking about the games. Sometimes just giving out all the answers and explaining everything soils the novelty of a piece of media. And it's great that we can be kept engaged in pieces of media by exploring unanswered questions, discussing theories, and discovering hidden meanings within. With all that said, I am sure you were expecting me to say, with all this evidence, that I believe that Rez is Gex's father. But I don't believe that to be true. Or, if I may be honest, I don't want it to be true. Because I don't want to have any feelings for Rez. And if he really does have a familial relationship, I would find myself having pity on him. That's not to say it's wrong to have pity on a villain, but with what I think Rez represents, I want him to remain a monster unworthy of my feelings. In order to convey my feelings about this whole situation best, I need to talk about Rezopolis, and how much it reflects the fears that we have today. I know this is a video about Gex facts, and all I'm about to say here on is subjective. But this is something that really makes me appreciate Gex Enter the Gecko, and highlights why Rez is such a successful villain to me. So, up until you reach Rezopolis for the first time, the levels are a wacky mishmash of gags, tropes, and parodies, and have charming musical direction that complements the series' tongue-in-cheek design of these worlds. This is the case for the first and the second game. But when you get to Rezopolis, things take a much darker, more serious tone. The atmosphere is grungy, metallic, and overall dystopian. There are mutants with a TV displaying an eyeball in place of their eye, bullet holes and what looks like blood splattered on the floor and walls, and tickers that display text that remind you that Rez is always watching you, even knowing your thoughts. What seals the deal here is the music. It is electronic, distorted, and full of noise. The electronic instruments, the background TV noise, and the drill are integral to portraying the horrifying atmosphere of Rezopolis. The church organ carries the bulk of the atmosphere that hangs in Rez's inner sanctum, and its decoration of pew-like torture benches and stained glass windows depict it as a church for Rez's brainwashed people to worship him as a god, to rule over every living soul. Rezopolis is like a totalitarian government facility, strikingly similar to the ministries of Oceania from George Orwell's 1984. The tickers stating he is watching you, his threats for thinking or talking, or feeling, billboards displaying Rez's cynicism and contentment with broadcasting misinformative news, and even executions of his enemies. And the number of television screens easily enables him to survey people all over the world. It all screams Oceania, Big Brother, Orwellian. Many people reference 1984 as a warning of what's going on today with the ever-growing tech industry, giant corporations, politicians, and the broadening economic gap between the billionaires versus the working class. Big tech has evolved in a way that easily allows elites to spy on people through their use of services, sell people's personal information to other companies for targeted advertising and keeping customers hostage, strip customers control and ownership of products, censor speech and ideas, and distract people from the real systemic problems by claiming that a more vulnerable class of people is to blame. All these things promote a materialistic, divisive, empty, and frankly inhuman way of living. And social media was fine-tuned to be especially effective in encouraging this. The algorithms compel us to stay confined in extreme groups and echo chambers, and discourage us to expand our minds and see the world as it really is. The elites want to take advantage of this, and so they purposefully take resources away from the people and the planet to force infighting between those below them. This is not only to prevent the elites from having to share their resources and giving the people below them time to think about what's really going on around them, but also to compel the common people to see them as superheroes or even gods in the earthly realm. The elite's backhanded destruction and false promises leads to them garnering trust and loyalty regarding the problems that they themselves have made. This is what I see with Rez. His goal is nearly identical to what is currently happening with the media. He wants to control the world through the means of TV and the building of a cult who worships him like a god. Utilizing wild conspiracy theories and fake news, he can create a world where it is impossible to tell what's truth and what isn't, evoking disharmony and unease among all peoples. Someone like that doesn't deserve any of my pity, as I believe their humanity is all but empty. I do apologize for bringing this up, but it cannot be understated how much I think about Rez in relation to the 2024 US presidential elections coming up. I don't follow the news very much because there's a lot to think about and a lot that's outside my control, but we are witnessing history here in the United States, with both sides of the political spectrum carrying out political agendas under the guise of a God-given destiny, and fostering a they versus them mentality upon the masses. The possibility of being misled or straight up lied to by social media groups, conspiracy theorists, and even the politicians themselves is dangerously high now. With how advanced technology has gotten and how much power one person can have to ruin another's life with hacking, deepfakes, and AI, it can become nearly impossible to know the true story of something, if anyone even wants to know and accept the truth in the first place. These are scary times we live in. It honestly makes me want to give up and hide. Try to live the most comfortable, pleasurable life possible as this madness is going on. While the truth is scary, I know I can't hide from it forever. Gex can tell you from experience that avoiding the truth to live a life of fantasies and unbounded pleasure won't solve your problems. During his moment of depression, Gex really wanted to live and breathe TV, but venturing through the media dimension, discovering sprinkles of Rez at every corner, and ultimately finding out his mission, motivates him further to take down Rez and become a new Gecko. As he is about to shut Rez off inside his TV prison, Rez tells Gex that he is his father in a seemingly humble way. He could have said it exactly like Darth Vader did to Luke to make the scene a little more dramatic, but he instead seems to show some emotion when talking. Could he actually have feelings? Well, here's what I think is going on. Rez, as the incarnation of all things evil in the media, is trying to manipulate Gex with his feelings and give him false information to, at the very least, shock him and make him drop his guard. If he could make him vulnerable by bringing up the root cause of his TV addiction, he could seize control of him at the last moment. But he fails. Because Gex has moved on from thinking about his dad. It was undoubtedly a painful process, but he learned to accept that his father is gone. You probably didn't realize, but Gex is ever so slightly growing up. The change isn't immediate, as he's still in love with the boob tube, but he is no longer willing to succumb to TV as much as he did before the events of the first game. When something terrible happens, one's first instinct is to try to find comfort by any means necessary. It could be money, it could be sex, it could be playing video games or browsing social media. But investing in those things will lead to a downward spiral if you're not careful. Eventually, you will need to face the cold hard truth that you can't hide from the realities of life forever. Lest you become a bumbling loser afraid to even take one step outside. People are going to try and bring you down, or pretend to bring themselves down so they can try to manipulate you. Don't let them succeed so easily. Educate yourself, gain some life experience, know who you are, and don't be afraid to question everything, especially against authority. As a start, instead of just going back to watching TV after defeating Rez, he dates a girl and spends some quality time with her. Since he already had a lot of money and took flirting lessons from Austin Powers, I'm sure he was easily able to find a girl to date. Seems the relationship didn't last too long though, since Gex would team up and fall in love with Agent Extra, but he becomes an agent of the TV Terrorist Defense Unit, keeping TV safe from the hands of evil. In the end, it doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things whether you believe Rez truly is Gex's father or not. I find it fascinating that a piece of media like this can be further appreciated despite which side you land on in this debate. For those who do believe it, they can find a more human, for lack of a better term, side to the villain. For those who don't, it underscores the facade of the media and how it can abuse emotions to hit you in vulnerable spots to manipulate you. Or both could happen at the same time. Whether you believe the familial relationship is real or not, I think we can all agree that Rez is an amazing villain in Enter the Gecko. If there is ever going to be a fourth game, I hope whoever's behind it doesn't confirm or deny their relationship and keep this discussion going. Hello, humans and animals alike. If you made it all the way to the end, I want to thank you wholeheartedly for watching. This video took ages to make, I know. There is a lot that's going on with my life. Working a few jobs, job hunting, making connections, talking with friends, playing other video games, doing other projects, and many other things. I originally wanted this video to be done in February, but I severely understated how daunting of a project this would be, combined with the other things life threw at me. There were some other facts I wanted to bring up, like the demo voice lines and a trailer for the game, but the video has gone on long enough. I want to thank all of you for waiting patiently for this project to be finished. There was a lot of footage I had to take myself, a lot I had to find and implement in this project, and a lot of reading various articles and watching videos about Gex, and in the case of the Rez portion, about 1984 and how it compares to the real world. The latter part I was really passionate about, and I think a bunch of you will agree with my concerns. I was thinking maybe we could start a trend. #RezIsReal. Talk about your experience and concerns regarding the media and its dangers with this hashtag on YouTube, Twitter, or X as it's called now, Instagram, and other places, and bring awareness to them. Don't live your life as just a pawn to the powers that be. Don't live your life as an insignificant cog in the machine. It's not just knowledge that's power, it's also a strong sense of self, spreading the word, and taking steps to become a better person. Not to gain numbers, but to gain genuine trust in humanity. Maybe then, this crocodile can learn to love humans so much more. I'm surprised that we haven't received any news on the Gex trilogy since its reveal last July. Considering the reputation of limited-run games as of late, it's likely that it won't be anything special and will be disappointing. They probably don't actually care about Gex. Oh well. Now, only one game remains in the trilogy, and I can tell a lot of you are already looking forward to it. I'm hoping to get that playthrough started at the beginning of Gex's 30th anniversary. Despite what some sources say, the original Gex was released in January 1995, so the plan is to start the Gex 3 playthrough around January 2025. I'm definitely going to need to step up my game for that game's bonus video, let me tell you. There are even more mysteries surrounding that game, and there's even a prototype that is worth going over. In the meantime, I hope to see you all in my next playthrough, which should start soon. I think you all have waited long enough for me to play some games and talk about them. So, with all that said, thank you very much for watching. This is Dylus signing off. See you next time.